I probably didn't know you before I was in the Navy, did I?
No, you were in the Navy and I was in high school.
Yeah.
And Ruth, Bill's sister Ruth, and I were best friends. And were you home from
Yeah, I
service?
came home from the Navy, and Harlan and Ramona were dating.
Yeah.
And Harlan and Ramona would go to the movie in Dad's car, and Ruth would go along, and you'd go along, and I was home single, and I got to go into the movie with them. And
I remember, do you remember the ice cream social at the Methodist Church?
oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, that was the summer Bill had come home from the Navy, I believe, am I right?
Yeah, I came home in May, early May.
Okay, and this was in August. So Bill had come, I guess, probably with Ruth, your sister, Ruth. You'd come as a family to the ice cream social. And I was hanging around with the group, you know. And I don't know how we decided we'd go to Murfreesboro. But several of us, including Bill, decided we'd go to Murfreesboro. We didn't have a car. So we walked out to Uncle Frank. Do you remember this?
No.
Walked out to Uncle Frank's. Uncle Frank and Aunt Dorothy, Doerr, lived on the highway in Virginia. And we walked out there, and it was summertime, August. And the house was all dark. They'd gone to bed. This was probably like 9:30, you know. It was getting late, and maybe 9. And so we went to under their bedroom window, and Bill, I guess, woke Uncle Frank up and asked if he could borrow his car. So we borrowed Uncle Frank's car and drove to Murfreesboro. And that was really the first time I ever thought about Bill as a, you know, he was a serviceman. He was older, and but he was home from service, and he looked pretty good to me. So.
Man, she has a better memory of that than I do.
Well,
but that
women do for that kind of thing.
Well, my first idea was that she was just my sister's best friend.
Yeah.
And I was just going along with them because that was the car that was going to the movie, and I wanted to go to the movie with them. But after one or two movies, I think we started thinking differently, didn't we?
Well, was that the summer then that you came back to SIU?
Yes.
Bill came back to SIU, and Bill's sister Ruth, and I was I still a freshman?
Huh? You came to SIU as a freshman.
Yeah.
And Old Main, that was the oldest building on campus, and it did not have an elevator in it. You had to climb the stairs to get to the third floor. And I knew that Betty's class might have been a gym class because it was in the old gym there. If I got up to the third floor for a certain hour class and looked out the window, I would see Betty going from one classroom to another.
One building.
One building, yeah, going down the sidewalk, one building to another. Yeah, that was the third floor of Old Main. She had a pleated skirt that I just loved.
Well, I had long blonde hair, as most young girls did, wore their hair long. And that
Not as long as now, though. Not as long as now, where it goes to the waist.
Shoulder length, and
Yeah.
I had pretty hair, didn't I?
Oh, yes.
And he ate his meals at a
Johnson's Co-op.
at a boarding type place that served meals about a block on toward the university from where I lived. And I was kind of watching for him to come walking down the street, So, which is kind of, we were both here and both in school, and, we just kind of started hanging out together. Well, I was crazy about him. I was nuts about him. I was very young, as I said. And I hadn't dated very many people, so.
How old were you?
He was,
She was
18.
18.
Oh, I was 19.
One day, 2 days before we got married. Her birthday, 29th of March, and we got married on the 2nd of April. She was 19 on the March 29th, and we got married on April 2nd. You going to answer or you want me to?
You want me to? We're celebrating our 70th anniversary. 70 years ago, it was a day much like today. It was spring, quite cool. I remember I did not have a white wedding dress. We were married. I had on a blue crepe dress, sleeveless, with a ruffle around it. I thought it was very pretty, and I bought it here in Carbondale at one of the stores on University Avenue. And my remembrance is that I probably paid like $24.95 for it, and that was pretty expensive at that time. And I was very proud of it and wore it for years for dress-up occasions.
And I had sold a bull calf for $100, and that's what I bought her diamond with. $100.
I thought it was $125.
Well, it might have been, but it wasn't. In today's money,
right?
It would be a very cheap ring.
Well, it wasn't a cheap ring. That's what they cost then.
Yeah.
What that one cost.
Is that the same one you're wearing now?
And the wedding ring, it was a set.
He asked if that was the same ring you're wearing now.
No, this is not the same ring.
Do you still have your original?
Well, this has the diamonds in it from my ring, and also I think maybe Naomi is wearing the little diamond that was in the center of my engagement ring. I had it made into a locket. The rings wore in two. I wore them, I didn't take them off and protect them for daily work. I wore them all the time. So they did those did wear out. And this, my wedding ring, you want to tell where that came from? Or do you remember?
That was my grandpa Will Doerr's wedding ring.
Not grandpa, grandpa.
Grandpa.
Grandpa Doerr's. This evening we're going to Tom's Place at DeSoto, and it's a very old restaurant and bar. And it was 70 years ago. It was the place to eat in Jackson County. And it was quite pricey for the time. I don't remember the cost of a meal, but it was, for the time, it was one of the better restaurants. And so we went there for dinner, not the evening we were married. The evening we were married, my mother had a cake and punch and coffee and that kind of little reception, my mom and dad, at their home. And then we went to Marion and stayed overnight over there at a hotel. And then the next day we were on our way home from there and stopped at Tom's for dinner. So and I don't know whether I had been to Tom's or not. Had you been there?
Oh, yes.
You had been.
I had been. That was the place to go for steak.
Yeah.
They were known for serving steak. And there weren't many steak houses in the county at that time.
No. When?
When the girls were little.
We were always full time. We didn't have much free time. in Virginia's, we lived in an old house that had been built.
No, in Raymond.
In Raymond. I'm sorry. The house had been built by a family that was retiring from the farm. So they built this house and a garage and a chicken house and planted a bunch of fruit trees and grapevines. So it was like a tiny farm. It was three city lots is what it was. So we raised chickens. We had a garden. We had fruit. We had a cow. After a while, we had a cow a block down the street. I rented a pasture there and a little barn. So Betty pasteurized the milk, and she had 2 or 3 customers that she
sold milk.
sold milk to. We had always had lots of food, good food.
Not really. We don't play cards. We just kind of work and
We've always worked together.
yeah.
For example, I would grow a garden. Betty would can, process, freeze. Chickens, we had chickens. A farmer gave me a pig one time, and I put it in the barn down where I kept the pasture where the cow was, and we sent the hog to a processing plant and had a freezer. We always had lots of food. We've never experienced any shortage of food because we both came from a farm background and knew how to grow and produce garden crops. And it was. Did we already tell that Betty had a pasteurizing equipment, and she'd pasteurize milk and sell it to some of the neighbors?
Mm-hmm. We had a pressure canner, so I canned food, and as Bill said, we bought a freezer from Sears on time payments. But as soon as we could manage the monthly payment, we bought a big freezer, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I think it was
22 feet.
cubic feet. Yeah.
And we tried to fill that up in the summertime. And
butter, chickens, vegetables. Oh, yeah. Churn cream and make butter.
Mm-hmm. We lived like we were living on a farm, and we knew how to do that, because that's how we grew up.
Just about the minimum time.
The minimum time, 9 months and 3 days or something like that. And I said that, Grandma Ida kind of drew a deep breath of relief when we'd been married long enough for it to be legal, legitimate, and so forth. So, yeah, the old ladies in Virginia's were counting the days. So was I. I was hoping I would not deliver early. So, Kathy was born in January, and Virginia was born the following May. So, 15 months after we were married, we had 2 children, 2 babies. And then we went to Champaign for Bill was going to go back to school, and we went to moved to Champaign with our two little ones. And Virginia was just a few months old, wasn't she? Or was she a year and a few months?
A year and a few months.
It was 1952.
51 when we went there.
Was it 51? Then 52 when we went to Raymond.
Raymond, you're right.
Yeah. When Virginia was born, I went to Mom, and when I knew we were expecting Virginia, I was upset, and I said to my mother, I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to manage 2 babies, And she said, well, one baby takes all your time. So the next one, you just divide it up a little differently. So that was the advice I had from my mother about child rearing. Kathy was born in 1949. Virginia was born in 1950. Then in 51, we went to Raymond. Went to
52.
U of I. 51 we went to U of I, and 52 we moved to Raymond. And 54, Naomi was born.
Well, in some respects, it was a circus because they had playmates the same age, and sometimes there would be 6 of them, wasn't there? Truby's,
Yeah.
our 3,
Most of the time.
Truby's 3, and 1 or 2 others. And they were a pack. They would go from one house to the other. We lived all along the same block. So
They collected goodies from all the moms, and when one mom ran out of goodies, they'd go to the next house.